Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the steamy, soot-streaked underbelly of Victorian health habits, where your daily wellness routine starts not with a green smoothie or yoga mat, but with chimney soot, strangers' bathwater, and the overwhelming stench of damp wool and unwashed feet. You won't believe this, but some Victorians genuinely thought coal smoke could cure everything from chest infections to melancholy. Alright, before you get too cozy, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe, but only if your heart says yes. And as always, tell me your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from. Dim the lights, get that fan going for some background vibes, and let's chill into tonight's little adventure. You wake up in a cramped London lodging house, sharing a room with two other coughing tenants. It's just past dawn, and your chest feels heavy from the damp winter air. The window's caked in soot. You hear the clatter of carts outside and someone already yelling about fresh turnips, even though you haven't had a real bowel movement since Tuesday. You're cold. You stink. You feel vaguely like death. And that's when you remember, today's the day for your health renewal. You shuffle down the street, wrapping your threadbare shawl tighter, until you arrive at the local public bathhouse. A massive building, dark bricks, with steam visibly rising from its chimneys. The word health is carved above the door in crumbling stone, though half the letters have eroded so it now reads HIE. Inside, the heat hits you like a punch in the lungs. Not fresh, not dry. It's wet, saturated with human breath and coal dust. A woman with half her teeth missing hands you a towel, if it can be called that, and you're led into a dim bathing chamber. Pools of tepid water, already half filled with other city dwellers, ripple gently. The steam? Not water vapour. It's from the chimney flue, intentionally routed to pass through the ceiling into the bathhouse rooms. The idea, you've been told, is that inhaling coal smoke helps open the lungs and disinfect the body from within. You sit awkwardly in the shallowest end of the communal pool. You try not to think about the two men across from you, one of whom has open sores on his ankles. The water smells metallic, and someone's soap from across the pool floats lazily past your knee. After 20 minutes, an attendant ladles hot water over your head from a blackened tin bucket and hands you a lumpy bar of medicated soap. You scrub under your arms, trying not to gag from the mix of sulphur and tallow. Someone coughs violently. Someone else starts humming a hymn. Just then, an older man beside you leans over and whispers, "You want the real cure? Go to Blackfriars. They do the smoke bath proper. Sit you in a box, pump in pure chimney soot. Clears out the demons." You try to laugh, but your throat is raw. And honestly, part of you is curious. Because in a world where medicine is expensive, doctors are for the upper classes, and every day you breathe in more London fog than air. Sometimes you have to believe that fire and steam can heal you. There's even a word for it among the locals, fumigation therapy. Not prescribed by doctors exactly, but passed from neighbour to neighbour, whispered in alleys, practised in hidden corners. One widow swears it cured her son's croup. A grocer claims it dried out his rheumatism. You can't be sure what's true anymore. All you know is that people keep coming back. By the time you leave the bathhouse, your skin feels rough, almost itchy. But your limbs are warm. You convince yourself that means something's working. The smell of coal clings to your clothes and your hair. You walk home through the grey streets, coughing twice, but this time with more vigour. Was it health or illusion? It doesn't matter. In the Victorian age, hope often came wrapped in heat and smoke. Back at home, your bones ache from the sudden contrast. Wet heat to stone-cold floorboards. You crouch by the fireplace, but the embers are fading, and there's no fresh coal to toss in. You rub your arms and wonder briefly whether the bath did anything more than fog up your thoughts. You smell like scorched soap and old ash, but you're not done. No, the full ritual requires one last step, the part that truly makes your neighbours swear by it. You fetch a small bundle from under the cot, a linen-wrapped brick still warm from being left near the stove all night. You unwrap it slowly. Inside, a lump of scorched pine resin and a handful of dried herbs, rosemary, mugwort, and a crust of what someone claimed was medicinal salt. It's your personal smoke tonic. You light the edge with a taper and place it carefully in the middle of a dented metal brazier. The mixture sizzles faintly, sending up a thin column of fragrant smoke. You bend your face over the rising spiral and inhale, eyes stinging slightly. A few doors down, you can hear a baby crying and a man swearing at a horse that won't budge. Here, though, in this grim little room, you're trying to sweat the sickness out. This home fumigation ritual is something between medicine and superstition, but it's surprisingly common in the tenements and back alleys of Victorian London, especially among the working class. There are no official recipes, just whispered advice. Add wormwood if it's a stomach pain, or moss if your lungs feel tight. The old woman across the hall once told you that rosemary protects the soul too. Not that you're entirely convinced, but when doctors cost more than a week's food, you improvise. You cough again. The smoke is heavier than you expected, but it reminds you of the sudatoriums wealthy patients sometimes visited. Luxurious steam rooms, borrowed from ancient Roman design, which the Victorians reinterpreted for modern hydrotherapy. They had copper pipes, ceiling vents, and attendants in crisp uniforms. You, meanwhile, are hunched over a rusted pot, wrapped in 2 blankets with a rag on your head. But the principle, you tell yourself, is the same. Just as the sweat starts dripping from your neck, a knock comes at the door. It's your neighbour, Sarah, holding a chipped cup of tar water. She swears by it. Boiled pine tar and water, with maybe a splash of gin if you're lucky. To keep the lungs open, she says with a wink. You sip it. It tastes like firewood and sadness. Later that evening, as you lie flat on your back, the bed frame groaning beneath you, you feel light-headed. Not in a good way. Your skin is warm, maybe too warm. You pull the covers up, even though the room smells like a chimney. You think, briefly, of the woman who died last winter after a fumigation gone wrong. They said she'd fallen asleep with the coals too close, or maybe she'd just breathed in too deeply. But it doesn't matter. You're not her. You're healthier now. At least that's what you'll say tomorrow, when the butcher asks why your eyes are so red and you can't stop sneezing. In the world you live in, health isn't about precision or science. It's a feeling, a ritual, a hope that if it burns, it cleanses. If it stings, it's working. If it smells terrible, then it must be good for you. And so you close your eyes to sleep, wrapped in ash, sweat and optimism. Tomorrow you might try vinegar foot soaks, or a mustard rub, or maybe just save your pennies for the leech man. After all, you've never felt quite this alive while coughing. The next morning your throat still rasps like a rusted hinge, but you wake with a flicker of purpose. It's market day, and you've saved 6pence. Not enough for a doctor, but just enough for the second best thing, a miracle tonic, sold by a man with the loudest voice in Suffolk. You button up your coat, still damp from yesterday's bathhouse fog, and make your way past carts piled with turnips, the sour smell of fish, and a man loudly extolling the virtues of leeches. But just beyond the fishmonger's stall there he is, the tonic man. His name's been lost to time, but today he's shouting beneath a flapping red umbrella. His cart is stacked high with glinting bottles, each one filled with a liquid of mysterious colour, some amber, some greenish, others nearly black. Labels curl from the damp, but you can still make out a few words. Revives the heart, stimulates the blood, cures all known weakness. And his voice. Oh, it carries like an actor on stage. Gentlemen, ladies, children of poor disposition and weak liver, Step right up and taste the elixir that made Queen Victoria herself dance a jig. You sidle in closer, pretending not to care, but he sees you. He always sees you. You, my friend, you look like a sufferer of melancholy liver. Do you sleep with cold feet and dreams of doom? This'll perk you up before you can say God save the Queen. You try to ask what's in it, but he waves the question off with flair. Root of gentian, tincture of cardamom, and a touch of imported delight from the Indies. Completely natural. It even smells like success. You hand over your coin and receive a bottle wrapped in wax paper. You sniff it. Sharp, metallic, and vaguely like old rum. You're not entirely sure what you've bought, but you've heard others say it helps with coughing, digestion, heartbreak, and even memory. This sort of snake oil trade, though few called it that back then, was rampant across Victorian England. Without strict medical regulation, almost anyone could bottle up a bitter brew, add a dash of alcohol or opium, and sell it as cure-all. Even more ironic, some of them did help. Mostly because they dulled the nerves so thoroughly you forgot what was wrong. You walk on, sipping cautiously. It tastes like burnt cloves and bitterness, but within moments, your cheeks feel warm. You're not sure if it's working, or if you're just mildly drunk before noon. Either way, it's a welcome sensation. At the corner, you pass an old woman selling her own home brew. Penny elixir for sorrowful bones. She swears it's made from elderflowers and prayers. Children chase each other nearby, one clutching a bottle labelled Tonic of the Sphinx. You wonder if he even knows what a sphinx is. But the one that truly stops you is a man balancing a crate on his bicycle, hawking Dr. Winslow's soothing syrup. You've seen it before. Mothers buy it to quiet teething babies. It works like magic, probably because it contains a generous helping of morphine. And yet, the city believes. The whole of London is built on fog, coal, and 1,000 miracle bottles promising everything and delivering, well, something. You walk home with your tonic half empty, the world spinning just enough to feel pleasant. You're not healed, but maybe, just maybe, you're a little less miserable, and that in Victorian England is more than enough to keep you buying. By the time you reach your street, the tonic has taken hold. Your step has a wobble, your mood a strange lift. You hum a tune you don't remember learning, and your headache has dulled to a soft throb behind your ears. Whatever was in that bottle, it did something. At your door, a neighbour is waiting with a grin. His name's Henry, and he has something even better than what you just drank. Came in from America, he whispers. Got it off a sailor who swears it made his brother grow back a tooth. You raise an eyebrow. He pulls a tin from his coat, carefully opening it to reveal small brown lozenges shaped like buttons. The label, barely readable, claims Dr. Beardsley's Patent Life Tablets for vital fire and male confidence. You're not sure if it's meant to fix your lungs or your pride. Maybe both. You don't take one. Not yet. But Henry pops two into his mouth and washes them down with a glug from his own tonic. Feel it kick in within the hour, he promises. He always says that. Inside, you sit at the table and study your bottle again. You realise it doesn't have ingredients listed. No dosage. Just a flourish of handwriting and a motto. Nature has no side effects. You're not sure whether that's comforting or ominous. It's not until years later that people begin to understand what was really inside many of these cures. Cocaine tooth drops for children, laudanum for menstrual cramps, chloroform rubbed on babies' gums to help them sleep. But in this moment, in this little room off a soot-lined street, none of that has been banned yet. There are no regulations, no safety caps, just belief, desperation, and belief. You remember, faintly, an old friend who took too much of a tonic last winter. He claimed it cured his joint pain, until he collapsed on the stairs with his mouth foaming. The apothecary said it must have been a bad batch. The vendor never came back to that corner again. Still, for every horror story, there are a dozen tales of miraculous recovery. A woman whose blindness lifted after 3 months of elder syrup. A man who could walk again after rubbing his legs with eel oil and nettle salve. You suspect the mind plays a role. But it's hard to argue with results when they come wrapped in conviction. Even Queen Victoria wasn't immune to the craze. At various times her physicians dabbled with chloroform, cannabis tincture, and arsenic solutions, all with medical intentions. If royalty could indulge in experimental cures, why shouldn't you? Outside, the tonic man is packing up, coins jangling in his coat pocket. His job's done for the day. He'll be back next week with a new sign, new slogan, maybe even a new name. But the bottles, they'll look exactly the same. And you'll probably buy another. Because in this world, health isn't just a science, it's a performance, a promise in a bottle, a lie you sip and pray becomes true. As you lie down, the last light fades behind the curtain. The bottle stands half-drained on the windowsill, catching the candlelight like amber glass. Tomorrow your cough might return, your head might pound. But for now, under the spell of secrecy and syrup, you feel, just for a while, like maybe you've been healed. You wake coughing. Again. A thick, dry rasp that claws up from somewhere deep behind your ribs. The tonic's worn off. Your mouth tastes like tin, and your throat burns as if you'd swallowed smoke. You sit up slowly, the blanket sticking to your skin. You're sweating, though the room is freezing. That means it's time for something stronger. In the kitchen, you pull out the small ceramic jar labelled simply mustard. Not the kind for sandwiches. This one's harsh, powdery, and intended for something far more punishing. You dump a hefty spoonful into a rag, dampen it slightly, then fold it and press it against your chest. Within moments, it starts to sting. This is your mustard plaster, an old standby in Victorian households. The logic is simple. If something hurts on the inside, then you punish the outside until it all evens out. The burning sensation means it's working, they say, and the more it burns, the more you believe. You lean back in your chair, arms crossed, the cloth sizzling faintly against your skin. By minute 5, you're writhing, but you tell yourself this is necessary. Doctors have long touted the benefits of counter-irritation, the idea that creating an artificial injury can draw attention, or blood, away from the real one. In your case, that means tricking your lungs into forgetting how much they hurt by making your skin scream louder. The pain grows sharp, your eyes water, but you feel alive in a perverse way. And that's more than you could say yesterday. Victorians adored these kinds of treatments. The more extreme, the better. Anything that produced visible results. Redness, swelling, tears, screaming. Some even upped the ante by mixing cayenne pepper or turpentine into the plasters. There's a rumour about a midwife who cured pneumonia using mustard mixed with kerosene. You hope that's not true. You also kind of want to try it. In the next room, someone sneezes hard. Probably Sarah again. She used horseradish poultices last week. Claimed they brought the fever out through her spine. Her back blistered so badly she couldn't sleep for 2 days. But then, she got better. Coincidence? Who knows? You peel the cloth off finally, wincing at the red mark it's left behind. The pain has shifted. Your chest does feel looser, or maybe just numb. You wrap yourself in your shawl and sip water carefully, watching the steam rise from the tin cup. You think about how strange it is that in this world relief and pain are inseparable companions. You've never encountered one without the other. Still, it's not just mustard plasters. There are endless home remedies with the same cruel logic. People wrap their necks in rags soaked with vinegar and salt. Some tie raw onions to their feet. Others press scalding bricks to their stomachs. It's not medicine, exactly. It's discipline. Pain becomes a kind of ritual cleansing, a form of control in a world where little else obeys your will. You breathe in, slowly. It rattles, but it doesn't catch. You lean your head back and close your eyes. The scent of mustard lingers in your nose. Maybe, just maybe, this time it worked. The relief, if you can call it that, lasts only a few hours. By mid-afternoon, the cough returns, dragging with it the dull ache behind your sternum. So, like any sensible Victorian, you reach for the next layer of remedy, blistering agents. You pull out a jar kept hidden behind the flour tin. Cantharids, sometimes known as Spanish fly. Not the kind whispered about in alley jokes, but the pulverized beetle-based powder used to raise skin blisters on command. It's potent. Dangerous too. But in the right dose, the theory goes, it pulls the illness out of your lungs and into your skin, where it can be popped, drained, and discarded like old soup. You take a moment to prepare. A clean cloth, a boiled needle, and the faint, flickering hope that this will go better than last time. You mix the powder into a greasy salve and apply it cautiously to the space just below your collarbone. Within minutes, it begins. A creeping itch that builds to searing pain. You grip the chair arms and whisper through clenched teeth, trying to remember how long you're supposed to leave it on. 10 minutes? 15? Some say the longer you endure, the more effective the treatment. Others say more than 20 minutes can cause permanent scarring. Of course, those people usually aren't the ones sick enough to try. The burning reaches a crescendo. When you finally remove the cloth, your skin is angry red and already swelling. A welt rises slowly, shiny and taut. You don't pop it yet. You're supposed to let the body draw for a few hours, so instead you sit there, holding a cup of cool tea and staring at the ceiling, sweat beading on your upper lip. It's a brutal logic, but one that makes a strange sort of sense. In a time when medicine is as much theatre as science, pain becomes proof. If a treatment hurts, it must be working. There are even travelling blister women in some districts, specialists who knock on doors with their own kits, jars and cloths, ready to sear sickness out of the body like blacksmiths hammering floors from iron. And let's not forget cupping, still popular among the desperate. Heated glass domes pressed to the skin, drawing blood and forming perfect purple circles. You remember a man at the workhouse with rings all down his back like some strange ritual branding. He said it helped his lungs expand. He died 2 weeks later, but not from the cups. Probably. You check the blister. It's ripe now, tense and gleaming like a plum. You grit your teeth and press the needle to it, slow and deliberate. The skin gives with a soft pop, and a bead of fluid rolls down your chest. You wipe it away with an old sock and bandage the spot gently. And then, miraculously, you do feel better. Not cured, but clearer. You can breathe in without the rattle. You feel lighter, less haunted by the ache in your ribs. Perhaps it's the shock. Perhaps the body just needed something worse to focus on. Either way, you take it. You lie back in bed, the sting still singing across your chest, and tell yourself, next time, you'll start with the blistering. Because sometimes the fastest way to feel well is to hurt just right. You spend the next morning hunched over, still tender from yesterday's blistering, but breathing a little easier. That counts as a win, at least until your stomach begins to churn with a discomfort you know too well. Not hunger, something darker, a creeping, coiling unease in your gut. You eye the small brown bottle on the shelf, the one with the label written in spidery ink, worm syrup, for the cleansing of the vitals. You unscrew the lid and sniff. It smells like molasses and turpentine. The stuff was originally sold for children, but plenty of adults take it too. Because if there's one thing Victorian medicine insists, it's that most illness comes from within. And sometimes within means a teeming, squirming colony of uninvited guests. You pour a spoonful and swallow fast, trying not to gag. It slides down thick and bitter. The label claims it'll expel roundworms, pinworms, liver flukes, creatures you'd rather not believe live inside you. Still, the logic is clear. If you've been eating food touched by unwashed hands, drinking water from a shared pump, or living in a house where rats breed behind the walls, then you've probably got a few passengers hitching a ride in your intestines. The effects begin within the hour. Cramps, gurgles, a sharp, unmistakable urgency. You grip your belly and shuffle quickly to the privy out back, hoping no one's there. It's not graceful. But afterward, as you sit there catching your breath, you do feel emptier, as if something has truly left you. You stare down and choose not to look too closely. Back inside, you sip water and try to rest, but your body isn't finished. You know what comes next. A bit of fever perhaps, or a rash. All part of the cleansing, but not everyone trusts worm syrup. Some prefer more direct methods, like the old dock worker you once knew who drank kerosene to kill the beast inside. He claimed it worked, right before he passed out for 3 days. Then there's Sarah, ever resourceful, who once swallowed a ball of thread soaked in milk to tie up the worms. The theory: worms would cling to the milk, get tangled in the thread, and come out like fish on a line. Did it work? Hard to say. She hasn't tried it again. But the most unsettling cure you've heard comes from across the channel. A tale about purposefully ingesting tapeworms for health and slimming. Capsules were rumoured to be sold, each containing a live worm egg. You'd swallow one, let it grow, and let it consume the sickness and surplus from within. The horror stories vary. Some claim people wasted away. Others swear by the clarity of mind it brought. Either way, you silently promise never to try it. Still, the urge to cleanse, to rid your body of the unknown filth inside, is powerful. The Victorians feared the invisible. Germs weren't fully understood. Parasites were half mythic, whispered about with equal parts fear and fascination. So when your body feels strange, sluggish, untrustworthy, you turn to what's available. Bitter syrups, chalky powders, burnt remedies that promise to scour your organs like steel wool. Because in this world, when you feel unclean, the only solution is to flush yourself from the inside out. Consequences be damned. By late afternoon, your stomach has settled, though your limbs still feel hollow, like they've been wrung out and left to dry on a line. You rest against the cold wall, sipping weak tea, wondering if the syrup truly did anything or if you just imagined it. Either way, the worst is behind you, for now. But illness in Victorian London never lingers alone. A few days later, it's not your gut that aches. It's a deep, festering cut on your ankle, scraped on a splintered cartwheel. The wound has grown red and swollen and the edges pulse angrily. You know what's coming next. Maggots. The idea sends a chill through you, but Sarah swears by them. "Let the little ones do the work," she said last month, when a boil on her wrist turned purple. She placed a strip of cloth laced with fly larvae across it, and by morning the skin was pink and clean. The wriggling disgusted her, she admitted, but not as much as the thought of rotting flesh. You hesitate, then make your way to the rag and bone man near the alley. He sells more than scrap these days. For a few pence he hands you a small tin box, still warm, lined with soft cloth and crawling with tiny squirming creatures. Back home, you prepare your leg as best you can. Warm water, a torn strip of clean linen. You lower the maggots onto the wound. They find it quickly, drawn to the moist decay. Their movement is slow, methodical, almost gentle in its own horrific way. You wrap the area loosely and lie back. There's no pain, just an odd awareness. An itch that isn't quite real. A tickle beneath the skin. This practice, maggot therapy, was quietly accepted in some circles, even among early surgeons who noticed that soldiers whose wounds attracted flies often healed faster. The larvae eat only the dead flesh, leaving the living skin untouched. A grotesque kind of precision. Nature's little surgeons. Still, the stigma lingers. You didn't tell your neighbour. You're not sure you'll tell anyone. You don't want to be known as the one who let bugs crawl inside you on purpose. But the next morning, when you unwrap the cloth, you see the difference. The redness has faded. The wound looks cleaner. The smell, faint and sour yesterday, is almost gone. The maggots, now bloated and still, have done their work. You dispose of them in the stove ash, hands trembling slightly. Then you scrub your leg with carbolic water and rewrap it, this time with herbs instead of insects. It's strange how something so primal, so unsettling, can bring healing. But perhaps that's the lesson here. In this era, the line between revulsion and remedy is razor thin. What disgusts you today may save you tomorrow. You limp to the window, watching the fog roll in again. Somewhere nearby, a child is crying. A vendor shouts about soot cakes, and in your little room your leg no longer throbs. Sometimes the cure isn't pretty, sometimes it wriggles. But in the world you live in, you take your healing however it comes. You manage to limp to the street corner the next day, your leg wrapped neatly, your cough quieter. A small victory. But the moment you turn toward the baker's, you feel it, the pull of your corset cinching tighter than you remembered. You pause, take a shallow breath, then another. But there's no room in your ribs. The corset doesn't give. You're not even dressed up. This is your day corset meant for support, not beauty. But every breath feels like inhaling through a straw. You brace yourself against a lamppost and try to stand tall. Posture is health, that's what they say. A straight spine and compressed waist are the markings of a proper Victorian woman. You've worn corsets since girlhood, like every woman you know. They come in silk or canvas lined with whalebone or steel. Laces run down the back like spider webs, pulling tighter each year. Your aunt used to joke, if you can't fit your waist in a teacup, you'll never fit in polite society. It wasn't a joke. Today yours is laced to 20 inches, still not enough by some standards. Some women reach 17, others famously went smaller. You once read of a duchess with a 13-inch waist, a size that makes your lungs tighten just thinking about it. But you push on. The goal is not comfort. The goal is grace, discipline, and the sweet illusion of health. Because Victorians believed a firm figure reflected a firm mind. A rigid frame was the sign of a respectable, controlled, and morally upright woman, and so you bind. Back at home, you wrestle the corset off with aching fingers, red welts line your sides, your shoulders sag forward with the sudden absence of tension. You feel boneless, like a puppet with its strings cut. You sit by the fire and breathe deep for the first time all day, but rest is short-lived. Evening calls for your walking corset, less structured, but still unforgiving. You sigh and pull it on again, tugging the laces tight, one eye on the clock. You think of the girls in the millinery shop next door, all of them laced tight and silent, pressing ribbons into hatbands with white knuckles. One of them fainted last week while arranging feathers. No one gasped. No one even flinched. The girl was simply peeled off the floor and propped near the window. She revived quickly, a splash of water to her neck. Too much tight lacing, someone muttered. And then they returned to sewing. It's common, expected. Even doctors, those who serve the wealthy, prescribe corsets for hysteria, spinal curvature, or prolapse. Some claim the pressure helps hold the organs in place. Others whisper that it's crushing the liver, the stomach, even pushing the uterus downward like a kettle sinking in mud. You don't know which is true, only that your back feels better when you wear one, and worse when you don't. That your stomach sometimes churns for hours, that your headaches grow sharper after long days in stiff posture. But when you look in the mirror with your waist tucked, your shoulders square, your chin slightly lifted, you look like a woman worthy of survival. And in this age, image is everything. Later that night, as the fog curls against your window and your breath clouds the glass, you ease out of your corset like a molting creature. The marks across your torso look like a map, crimson paths left by stays and bones. You press your fingers to one particularly deep groove along your ribs and wince. It's tender, but you've had worse. You curl under the blankets and try to sleep, but your chest feels oddly hollow without the pressure. You shift, twist. You can't find a comfortable position. Isn't it strange that the thing you loathe all day becomes a kind of safety at night? And then, without warning, your breath catches. You sit upright, gasping. A sharp stab radiates through your side. For a moment you wonder if it's your heart. But you know better. It's the same pain that visits now and then, especially after long days of lacing. The doctor once called it floating ribs, said your bones may have shifted from pressure. You remember the way he said it, as casually as one might comment on weather. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders and pace the room slowly, hand pressed to your ribs. It eases, eventually, but it leaves behind a dull, menacing echo. You think of women like Kathy Jung, who'd eventually be celebrated in freak shows and parlours for achieving a 14-inch waist. You think of the fainting couches placed in every respectable salon, not decorative, but practical, for women overcome by their own restrictive garments. But the cruelest part isn't the pain, it's how deeply the corset is tied not to your body but to your worth. Even without it on, you find yourself sitting straighter, tucking in your stomach, holding your shoulders stiff. The posture has seeped into your muscle memory. The idea of the corset lingers long after the laces are loosened. You know stories, everyone does, of girls who slept in training corsets from age 12, who had ribs removed to make room, who carried smelling salts in silk purses like fashion accessories, fainting twice a day and calling it poise. Your own mother, gone now, used to tell you, better a broken rib than a broken reputation. At the time you laughed. Now you're not so sure it was a joke. In the morning you'll put it on again. You always do. Not because it feels good, but because without it, you feel invisible. Exposed. Like a painting with its frame torn away. And as you finally lie back down, pulling the covers to your chin, you breathe carefully, not too deep, and think, absurdly, how strange it is that something designed to suffocate you can also make you feel secure. The Victorian age doesn't just mould your body, it moulds your mind to believe that pain is elegance, that beauty is obedience, that your spine must be sculpted like marble, even if it breaks in the process, and so you sleep in its shadow, quiet, still, shaped by steel and expectation. The next morning brings a new discomfort. Your lips are dry, your mouth tastes metallic, and your breath, well, let's just say the tea didn't help. You reach for the little blue glass bottle on the shelf, marked only with a curling label. Mouth elixir, for freshness and vital energy. You already know what's inside, diluted ammonia. They don't call it that, of course. Some bottles say spirits of hartshorn, others household volatile salts. But everyone knows, especially those who can't afford real dentists, that gargling with it will sharpen the tongue and purify the breath. At least that's the claim. You pour a small amount into a chipped cup and add water, watching the liquid cloud. Then you swish it around your mouth, trying to ignore the burn in your gums and the sting in your eyes. For a few seconds it feels like your teeth are being scrubbed by invisible razors. You spit quickly and rinse twice, wiping tears from the corners of your eyes. There, that should be enough to last through the market without offending anyone with your exhale. This isn't unusual. The Victorians were obsessed with bodily odours, associating foul breath and sweat with moral decay. Fresh breath was not just about charm, it was a sign of virtue, self-discipline and cleanliness of the soul. And if that meant swishing ammonia, so be it. You sit for a moment to catch your breath, ironic, considering. Then reach for the next remedy in your rotation, vinegar water. A spoonful in a glass of warm water sipped slowly. It puckers your mouth and tightens your throat, but some women swear it keeps the complexion pale and the waist trim. It clears the blood, they say, cuts through sluggishness like a blade. You've even heard of ladies soaking rags in vinegar and wrapping them around their necks overnight to draw out impurities. You don't go that far. Yet. Outside your window, the baker's apprentice jogs past, red-cheeked and winded. His breath forms clouds in the air, and you instinctively tighten your shawl. You've heard boys his age sometimes rinse their mouths with kerosene for freshness and stamina. You pray that's just gossip. The worst is the memory of your Uncle George, a man devoted to natural cures. He once gargled with turpentine, believing it would harden his gums and kill the breath demons. It killed something, certainly. He couldn't taste anything for a week. And then there's the fashionable but deadly beauty secret whispered about in private salons, sipping diluted carbolic acid to whiten the teeth. Just a touch, they say, just enough to melt the yellow. You've never dared. But you've seen women at the theatre with glowing white teeth and glassy eyes who perhaps did. You rinse your mouth again, this time with plain water. It doesn't help much, but what matters is that you tried, that you swallowed something bitter, endured the sting and emerged fresher, even if only for a few hours. Because in the Victorian world, wellness often tastes like punishment. And if it didn't burn, it wasn't doing anything at all. You step out into the street with your tongue still tingling faintly from the ammonia rinse. The vinegar sloshes slightly in your belly, bringing a strange heat to your core. But you walk tall, breathe shallow, and hope no one notices the trace bitterness behind your polite good mornings. A woman passes you, a well-dressed one, hat perched just so, and you catch a whiff of lavender and camphor with something sharper beneath. You know that smell. She's been rubbing her gums with spirit of salt. Hydrochloric acid, by another name. A popular option among the wealthier sort. It bleaches the teeth beautifully before eventually melting them away. But the trick is to stop just before the enamel surrenders. She smiles at someone across the street. Her teeth are gleaming. Down another lane, you see the man who lives above the print shop. He's crouched behind a cart, clutching his throat and coughing into a cloth. Not just any cough, it's the heavy, echoing bark of a chronic condition. Rumour says he gargled kerosene and lemon for a month straight. Claimed it brought up years of phlegm in one morning. His voice has sounded like gravel ever since. You pass the grocer's stall and notice a row of small ceramic jars neatly arranged. A handwritten sign reads, "Chlorate of potash lozenges for sore throats, sweetened breath, and steadfast hearts." The name is fancy, but you've tried them. They fizz on the tongue, numbing everything. A mix of mint, chalk, and quiet dread. One too many, and your gums swell, your mouth peels like sunburn. But people keep buying them, because they work, until they don't. At home, you remove your shawl and catch your reflection in the mirror. Your eyes look tired. The whites are tinged ever so slightly yellow, but your cheeks are pale, your lips not too dry. You look passable. You think of the lengths people go to just to maintain this illusion of freshness. The girl who snorted dry baking soda each morning until her nose bled. The midwife who brushed her teeth with crushed charcoal and brandy. The butcher's wife who whispered of a peppermint and mercury concoction she swears made her husband kiss her again. And then there's the tragedy of young Edith, who brewed her own rinse from quicklime, milk and honey. She said it gave her a smile, like marble. She was buried 2 winters ago, her tongue rotted, her breath gone sour from the inside out. But Edith died beautiful. That, in the eyes of the Victorian world, almost counted for something. You dab rose water on your temples and set the bottle down carefully. It's not medicine, but it smells like what health should feel like. Light, floral, fleeting. You close your eyes and breathe in deep, just once. In a world where cleansing often means stripping away layers of your body 1 rinse at a time, little perfumed lie can be the gentlest cure of all. You settle into your chair by the window, sip weak tea and listen to the city cough and clatter outside. Tomorrow you may try clove oil, or alum, or maybe just silence, but for tonight your breath is sweet enough. And that here is a kind of peace. You're dozing lightly by the fire when a knock rattles your door. You shuffle to open it and find a thin boy with soot on his cheeks holding a small crate. He nods silently, hands it to you, and vanishes into the fog. Inside the crate, carefully packed in straw, is a peculiar device, a resuscitation kit from the Royal Humane Society. You'd heard about them being installed near the Thames, but now, thanks to Sarah's cousin at the docks, one has landed in your lap. You set it on the table and stare at it like a foreign object. A polished wooden box hinged like a treasure chest. Inside, brass tubing, bellows, and a long leather tube. A printed leaflet is folded neatly against the lid, titled in bold type, Tobacco Smoke Enema Apparatus for the Revival of the Recently Drowned. Yes, that kind of enema. You blink. The absurdity of it nearly makes you laugh. But in the Victorian world, this isn't a joke. Tobacco smoke was believed to be a life-giving stimulant, especially when pumped into the rectum. The thinking went, cold water kills by shutting down the system, and warm stimulating smoke reignites it. And not just any smoke, tobacco smoke. The kit includes a small brass pipe meant to be inserted, and a bellows that pushes smoke, gently or forcefully, depending on the stubbornness of the case. There were even kits like these installed along the banks of the Thames to be used on drowning victims right there on the spot. You can't help but imagine the scene. A lifeless man dragged from the river, soaked and blue, trousers yanked down in haste while a constable bellows tobacco smoke up his rear. A crowd gathers. Some turn away, others nod solemnly. It's science at work. You hold the bellows in your hand, pressing it gently. The mechanism still works. A soft wheeze of air hisses out. You're not sick enough to need it today, but you tuck it away just in case. You never know what kind of emergency tomorrow might bring. Because in this era, orifices are gateways. The Victorians believe health can be delivered from any direction, through the mouth, the skin, the nose, even the rectum. You've heard of vinegar enemas for fevers, cold water enemas for constipation, warm milk enemas for babies. But tobacco? That's special. That's for resurrection. It's not just the Royal Society promoting it. Many physicians, not fringe ones, once believed in the power of internal smoke. One even claimed it stimulates the intestines into immediate awakening. You wonder how anyone discovered that, or how many died before the right temperature was found. The idea of it unsettles you, but it also fascinates you. Like so many of the cures in your world, it blurs the line between the grotesque and the logical, and in a city where illness can creep in overnight and strike down the strong, even the absurd becomes plausible. You wrap the kit in a towel and store it beneath your cot. You may never need it. But if the river takes someone you love, and the doctor's too far, and the air's too cold, well, better to have a bellows and not need it than the other way round. You lie awake longer than usual that night, the box under your bed pressing on your thoughts like a weight. It's strange how something so small could carry the promise of revival, or humiliation, or both. But that's the Victorian bargain, isn't it? You sacrifice comfort for survival, and dignity for the faint possibility of breath. The next morning you mention it to Sarah over tea, half joking, testing the waters. She doesn't laugh. She leans in. "Oh, I've seen it used," she whispers, eyes darting to the door. "Back when I worked at the baths, one of the porters collapsed. No pulse. They didn't know what to do, so a nurse ran to the cabinet and pulled out one of those things." You blink. "And?" "He woke up coughing, eyes wild. They said it was the warmth." She pauses, then adds, "And the shock, I suppose." You both sit in silence a moment, stirring the weak tea. You wonder if it was the tobacco, the technique, or just sheer luck. But in a world where medicine is guesswork wrapped in brass and velvet, who's to say? As the weeks pass, the smoke enema kit stays put, unopened, unused, but not forgotten. You begin to notice just how many remedies in your world depend on heat and movement. Warm baths for melancholy, rubbing alcohol into stiff joints, brisk walking for low spirits. Everyone believes illness is cold and slow, so the cure must be hot and quick. That's why tobacco smoke is seen as holy. It's not just a stimulant, it's fire, breath, motion. The opposite of stillness, of death. In that sense, maybe the kit isn't so strange after all. You recall how even fashionable men at the gentlemen's clubs keep cigars handy for nerve settling, and how surgeons have been known to blow pipe smoke into wounds before bandaging, believing it disinfects. One apothecary even tried infusing smoke into the bloodstream using leech tubes. He was fined, but not laughed at. That's the line you walk every day, between belief and desperation, between remedy and ritual, and always, just barely, on the right side of collapse. A few nights later it happens. A neighbour's child falls into the canal. They pull her out blue-lipped and stiff. No one knows what to do. Someone calls for a doctor, but he's a half-hour away. The mother screams. The child doesn't move. You run. You grab the box. The rest is a blur. Kneeling in the mud, hands trembling, fumbling with brass pieces in the dark. No one speaks. No one laughs. They watch. They hope. And when the child coughs, just once, a tiny shudder, it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like borrowed time. Later, you sit by your fire, mud still on your hem, the box open at your feet. You stare into the empty bellows and wonder how many lives hang in the space between ridiculous and miraculous. You don't sleep that night, but you breathe. Deep, slow, quiet breaths. And that, for now, is enough. The city is buzzing today. Quite literally. You step out and hear it before you see it. A low, electric hum drifting from the chemist's shop window. A crowd has gathered, necks craned, watching a wiry man demonstrate the latest marvel in modern health. It's called the Pulvermacher chain, and it promises to restore energy, awaken tired limbs, and balance the blood's vital force. In simpler terms, it's a belt that zaps you. You push closer, curious. The demonstrator has it strapped around his waist, wires trailing like ivy vines. A second coil wraps his thigh, pulsing faintly. He smiles wide and assures the gawking crowd, it feels like a gentle tingling, nothing more. A woman in front of you mutters, "My cousin's husband wore one for 3 weeks, said it cured his lumbago and got him out of bed, if you know what I mean." She smirks behind her fan. You raise an eyebrow. The applications of electricity in Victorian health are broad and, at times, hilariously vague. Some devices target the nerves, others promise better digestion. There's even one with a metal saddle meant to stimulate female calmness. You don't ask. Later that day you find a cheaper version at second-hand stall. The seller, a red-faced man missing 2 fingers, assures you it's in working order. Just soak the pads in vinegar, strap it on, and let it do the rest. At home, you follow the instructions. The belt smells faintly of brass and mildew. You fit it snugly around your midsection, then connect the wires to the small tin battery. There's a brief pause, then a tickle, a twitch, and then, suddenly, a buzz so sharp it nearly knocks the wind out of you. You double over, laughing and yelping all at once. It hurts, but not enough to stop, and you admit the warmth spreading through your torso is oddly invigorating, like your muscles are waking from a long nap. These electric contraptions are all the rage now. Victorian society has fully embraced the idea that electricity is not just for lamps and telegraphs. It's the pulse of life itself. If it can light a city, surely it can reawaken a weary body. You've read newspaper ads for electromagnetic corsets, which claim to align the spine and burn away damp humours. There are vibrating brushes for the scalp, crackling rings for arthritis, and foot plates that shock you with every step, marketed as walking your way to wellness. It's not just quackery, not entirely. Even respectable doctors are experimenting with controlled electrical treatments in hospitals, and some patients, especially those with paralysis or chronic fatigue, swear by them. One London surgeon described electricity as God's breath, harnessed for the healing of man. You're not sure about divinity, but as you lie on your cot with the belt humming faintly around your waist, you do feel strangely alert, like something inside you has stirred, however briefly. Sure, it might be nerves, misfiring, or your bladder about to revolt, but for this moment in this room you feel alive, and in a world filled with sluggish blood, aching bones and endless winter chills, even a jolt of pain can feel like hope. The next morning you wake feeling different. Not better exactly, but charged, like something unseen is still humming under your skin. A soreness lingers along your ribs where the belt's pad sat, and your hair stands up slightly when you reach for the tin kettle. Perhaps it's coincidence, or perhaps you've finally become a conductor. You step into the street and spot another familiar figure, Mr. Baird, the old tailor. He's standing still as a statue, arms at his sides, eyes closed. At his feet lies a tangled set of cords and copper discs. He opens one eye and grins. "Magnetized shoes," he says, tapping his toe against the cobbles. "Every step realigns the soul. Bought 'em off a man from Glasgow." You nod politely, but it's not the strangest thing you've heard today. Magnets are everywhere now, pounded into soles, stitched into gloves, embedded into belts and collars. Advertisements promise they'll draw out bad energies, neutralize poisons, even protect from madness. There are magnetized pillows said to chase nightmares away, and bed frames lined with north-facing rods to realign the body's magnetic current. It all stems from a deep belief that the human body is an instrument, and Victorian society is frantically trying to tune it. You recall the magnetic brush Sarah tried last winter, dragging it across her scalp for 10 minutes each morning. She claimed it made her dreams more vivid. You never told her she looked slightly electrocuted. And then there was the gentleman at the apothecary who wore a necklace of iron beads wrapped in red thread. He whispered that it kept his black moods away. You assumed it was for nerves. Later you heard he hadn't slept in 5 days and thought pigeons were spying on him. Even more fantastical is the device you saw once at a curiosity fair, the electrogalvanic bath. A clawfoot tub filled with salt water and copper plates, where patients sat nude while low voltage pulsed through the water. "Stimulates every pore," the man cried. You're not sure if anyone actually tried it, or if it was just an elaborate way to boil a person alive. But despite the absurdity, there's something undeniably seductive about these devices. They hum, they spark, they do something. In an age when so many cures are tasteless powders or invisible spirits, electricity is proof. It's seen, heard, felt. You wrap your coat tighter and step carefully over a puddle. Suddenly, the idea of being lightly electrified while standing in water seems unwise. Back home, you tuck the pulvermacher belt into a drawer, not because you're finished with it, but because you've decided to use it sparingly, like a tonic or a sermon. Not every ailment needs fire, and as you sit with your hands folded, a low winter sun pouring in through the glass, you marvel at what your world has become. A place where vitality is sold in sparks and straps, where the future pulses gently beneath your skin, where hope arrives not in silence, but in a steady, comforting buzz. The fog is thick again today, and your body aches in that familiar, unshakable way. Not the sharp pain of a wound, nor the scratch of a cough. This is something duller, something that lives inside the bones. You stare at the fire, barely lit, and think, maybe it's just the weather. But in your world, nothing is just anything. A low mood, a lingering weariness, a faint heaviness in the chest. These aren't inconveniences. They're signs, warnings, and there's a treatment for everything. So when Sarah knocks and says she's going to the leech man, you don't laugh. You ask if he takes 2 at once. The leech man sets up twice a week behind the greengrocer's, beneath a striped canvas awning, with wooden benches and jars lined up like organs in glass. Each jar pulses with life, slippery, dark, sinuous creatures, bobbing gently in murky water. He keeps them cool and hungry, which is what you want. You don't pay for full bellies. He greets you with a knowing look. Fatigue or melancholy? You blink. Both. He nods once and points to the bench. Roll up your sleeves. You sit. The cold air nips at your skin. He selects 3 leeches with metal tongs and places them along the soft inside of your forearm. You flinch, not from pain, but the sensation. Like wet silk crawling up your veins. The first latch is sharp, the second slower, the third almost gentle. Then the blood begins to flow. Victorian medicine holds that imbalances of the blood are at the root of most illness. Too thick, you're sluggish. Too hot, you're angry or mad. Too black, you're melancholic. The leeches draw it out, balance the humours, restore calm. At least that's the promise. And people believe. They come with headaches, palpitations, menstrual cramps, confusion, toothaches. Some come weekly, like a ritual. The sight of blood is reassuring, a visible assurance that something has been removed, released. Sarah sits beside you, one leech clinging to her ankle. She's humming faintly, almost dreamily. You glance at the tiny creatures feeding from your arm. It doesn't hurt, but it does feel strange, intimate even. A shared transaction. You give them blood. They give you peace. After 10 minutes, the leechman removes them gently and presses cotton to the bites. You're a bit lightheaded, but lighter in spirit too. And when you walk home, the sky looks a touch less grey. That evening, as you change the cotton dressings and watch the bruises bloom, you feel something like gratitude. Not to the man, not to the science, to the leeches. They asked for nothing but what you could spare, and they left you, oddly enough, feeling more whole than you had in days. The bruises darken overnight, purples and yellows blooming like ink beneath your skin. You touch them gently in the morning light, marvelling at the shape each leech has left, like a tiny kiss, or a bite from something prehistoric. Your arm aches, but it's not unpleasant, more like a reminder that something inside you has shifted. Downstairs, you boil water for tea and catch your reflection in the kettle lid. There's colour in your cheeks again. Not the pinched artificial rouge of vinegar or arsenic, but something real. You feel tired, yes, but clearer. As if your thoughts have stopped clanging against each other quite so loudly. You think about how people once used leeches to cure everything from nosebleeds to epilepsy. Some physicians even applied them behind the ears to quiet madness. And for melancholia, the treatment was a full dozen placed along the spine. There's an apothecary in Marylebone, they say, who keeps over 500 leeches in a tiled back room, rotated, rested, respected. A nurse there swears each one has a temperament, that some are gentle and slow, others greedy and fast. She talks about them like cats. You smile at the thought. There's a kind of strange dignity in these old treatments. They're messy, yes, sometimes painful, often unproven, but they involve you. Your body's present, responsive. It bleeds. It heals. You're not just swallowing a powder and hoping it stirs something deep inside. You're watching the illness be drawn out. That evening you walk slowly to the end of your street. The air is sharp, but it feels good. Awake. As you pass the butcher's, you hear someone mention their sister's recovery. The leeches turned blue, the woman says, as if this were a sacred sign. Maybe it is. Victorians give meaning to everything. A redder leech meant fever. A sleepy leech, poor blood. A stubborn one, who wouldn't latch. An omen. They say the leech knows before you do, that it senses the sickness hiding under the skin. Back home you unwrap the bandages. One of the bites has started bleeding again, just a little, a soft, slow ooze. You press fresh cloth against it, then pour yourself a cup of broth. You sit by the window and sip, watching chimney smoke drift through the air, curling like leeches in reverse. Grey trails rising instead of burrowing in. It's strange. You're not cured, you're not well, but you're not drowning in yourself anymore. Somehow, in the quiet sting of teeth and the warmth that followed, something broke loose inside. A fog cleared, a weight shifted, and you think, not without irony, maybe the blood really was the problem all along. You wake hungry, not just peckish, but hollow, as if someone scooped your insides out during the night and left a note that says, "Feed me or faint." It's not the usual dull ache of fasting or the slow gnaw of rationed bread. This is sharp, specific. You want beef, but not to eat. That's too extravagant. Instead, you shuffle to the cupboard, retrieve a bit of raw meat wrapped in wax paper, and carry it to the mirror. Your face, pale and waxy, reflects back at you with a kind of resigned disbelief. You unfold the meat and press it gently to your cheeks. Raw meat facials, the latest in Victorian beauty rituals, and oddly, a health remedy too. The theory goes like this. Red meat is warm, alive, full of energy and vital force. If you can't afford to eat it, you can at least let your skin absorb its strength. Pressing raw beef to the face supposedly reduces inflammation, evens the complexion, and tightens tired skin. Some say it improves mood. Others say it simply distracts you from despair. The meat is cold and clammy. It sticks a little. You close your eyes and breathe through your mouth. You can almost imagine the warmth of life being pressed back into your bones. It's not just vanity. In Victorian London, the lines between beauty and health blur constantly. What makes you look better is assumed to make you feel better. Pale skin, a sign of purity and wellness. Rosy cheeks, circulation. Glossy eyes, youth. Your face is not just decoration, it's diagnosis. You hold the beef there for 10 minutes, maybe more, until it warms in your hands and starts to smell faintly of iron. When you peel it away, your cheeks are flushed, as if kissed by something gentle, or slapped by something firm. Either way, it works. You return the meat to its paper. Some women throw it out after one use. Others, those with fewer coins, rinse and rewrap, storing it in a cold pan beneath the floorboards for another day. Waste not. You settle into your chair and sip broth, watching the steam rise. There's still some fat floating on top. Beef tea, as it's called. A favourite of hospitals and invalid homes across the country. Made by boiling bones, gristle and water until all the flavour and strength is gone from the meat and transferred to the liquid. It's not food. It's medicine. Doctors swear by it. They prescribe it for everything: fever, childbirth recovery, heartbreak. It's served to the dying, the weak, the melancholic, not because it fills the belly, but because it symbolises care. The irony, of course, is that the meat used for facial masks is often more nutritious than the soup you're drinking. But no one dares say that aloud. You sip again and sigh. It's not satisfying, not really. But it's warm, and in your world, warmth is hope. You place the teacup down and lean back, cheeks still tingling from their communion with the butcher's offering. You wonder if Queen Victoria ever tried it. Probably not, but her subjects do, and they swear by it. Because in this time and place, healing isn't just about survival. It's about looking like you're surviving, even when you're not. You sit quietly, watching your tea cool as the meat mask's afterglow fades from your cheeks. Your stomach still growls, but your face somehow feels firmer, more alive. It's a strange trade, really. Starve the belly, feed the mirror. Out the window, across the street, a nursemaid from the Wilkins household steps outside holding a bowl of beef tea. She walks carefully toward an elderly man slumped against the stoop. His eyes flutter open when the steam hits his nose. That's the other place beef tea lives, in sickness and dying. Hospitals serve gallons of it, not because it cures, but because it comforts. It's warm, familiar, easy to digest. You've heard it called essence of beef, as if something essential, something soulful, boils out of the bones and into the broth. The Victorians believe it holds the animal's vitality, the life force, a kind of meaty ghost in liquid form. You remember when your aunt was sick, fevered and weak, unable to keep bread down. She took nothing but beef tea for 3 weeks, didn't say much, just sipped and sighed. She never got better, but she didn't seem to mind as much while the tea was warm. Some families go a step further. They add brandy or egg yolk, a richer tonic for when the end is near, and when even that is refused, the steaming bowl is still brought in, placed at the bedside like an offering. You lift your cup again and wonder how many people have lived their final days tasting exactly what you're tasting now. Not all are convinced, though. A few medical reformers whisper that beef tea is nothing but flavoured water, that it contains less nourishment than a slice of bread. But those voices are quiet. After all, it's not polite to question what keeps the ill hopeful. And it's not just the tea. Some apply beef directly to wounds, especially older women who've passed down remedies through generations. They wrap bruises in raw veal, soak sprains in marrow compresses, or place liver slices on blackened toes. There's something sacred about touching meat to flesh, like calling on something stronger to stand guard over something weaker. You once heard of a midwife who swore by laying beef tripe on the belly of a labouring mother. It draws out the pain, she said, like iron draws fire. And of course, there's the fringe belief, whispered, rarely written, that the spirit of the animal might somehow enter the body through prolonged contact, that its endurance, its strength, might seep into your own blood. You don't entirely believe it. But as you wrap up the beef from your facial and slip it into a basin, part of you wonders if you should say, "Thank you." That night, you drink the last of your broth and rest your head near the window. The fog presses gently against the glass. You're not full, but you're not empty. And that, for tonight, is enough. The arsenic pills sit in a velvet-lined box. You found them at the apothecary last week, tucked between the smelling salts and the raspberry leaf tinctures. The label was almost coy. Dr. Fletcher's complexion enhancers for radiant skin, youthful glow, and feminine vitality. The clerk didn't blink when you bought them. He even offered a discount for buying 2 tins. You hold one pill between your fingers now, chalky, pale, barely larger than a buttonhole bead. There's nothing threatening about it, not at first glance. But you know better. Arsenic's a poison. That much everyone agrees on. It can kill rats, ruin crops, and with enough dosage, end a human life silently and elegantly. But in small doses. The Victorians believe it can do wonders. You place the pill on your tongue and swallow with water. There, no burning, no taste. Just a slow, creeping heat in your chest. You wait. The fashion for arsenic began years ago, among the Austrian elite. Women in the Alps took it to preserve their beauty, claiming it smoothed the skin, brightened the eyes, and gave a luminous, ghost-pale complexion, prized by portrait painters and gossip columnists alike. It made you look ethereal, fragile, rich. It spread like wildfire to England. Soon women in London were buying arsenic wafers, tonics, even face creams laced with the stuff. Not openly, of course, but quietly, secretly. Passed between gloved hands in drawing rooms and whispered about during tea. You look in the mirror. Your skin is already fair, but with this, maybe it will glow, just enough to outshine the bloom of red along your jawline, just enough to look more porcelain than paper. Of course, you've heard the warnings. Arsenic can blacken the fingernails, thin the hair, blur the vision. One girl in your building took too many and spent a week vomiting into a porcelain basin before she stopped breathing entirely. But she looked stunning in her coffin. Everyone said so. You tell yourself you'll only take 1 pill a week, maybe 2. You don't need to be perfect, just presentable. The beauty magazines are full of hints, none explicit, all carefully veiled. Glow elixirs, complexion harmonizers, veil powders. You recognize the code now. You see the sheen in a lady's cheeks and wonder if it's rouge or recklessness. You think about all the other things you've endured in the name of health. The burning mustard plasters, the blistering cantharides, the vinegar gargles, the meat masks. Compared to those, this pill is silent, elegant, almost polite, and besides, the men don't complain. They notice the brightness in your eyes, the smoothness of your skin. They call you delicate, feminine, soft as milk. They don't ask what it costs. You tuck the velvet box into your drawer and brush a hand across your cheek. No rash yet, no tingling. Just a quiet, unnerving sense that something inside you has changed, shifted, begun, and whether it's beauty or poison blooming beneath. Your skin, you're not quite sure, but tomorrow you'll take another. Because in Victorian England, the glow of health is worth its weight in death. The days pass, and the glow builds slowly. You catch glimpses of yourself in shop windows, surprised by the faint shimmer on your cheekbones, the unnatural clarity in your eyes. People notice too. The grocer calls you Rosie. The baker's boy tips his cap. You smile, demurely. You don't say a word about the pills, because you've learned that the first rule of arsenic beauty is silence. No one admits it, everyone suspects it, and no one stops. Sarah, of course, suspects. One afternoon she leans in, inspecting you closely. "You've changed," she murmurs. "Your skin, it's like polished milk glass." You shrug. "Must be the beef masks." She doesn't press. But later that evening she asks if you're still visiting the apothecary. Arsenic lives in more than just pills. You see it in face creams, powdered foundation, even soaps. The beauty press call it French white, or the Alpine blush. One ad in the Ladies' Gazette reads, "For the pale of disposition, a secret favoured by the Empress herself." You know what that means, everyone does. Still, not all stories are glamorous. You remember Ada, once the belle of your boarding house, always powdered to perfection. Her skin glowed like satin until the corners of her mouth began to darken and her fingernails turned faintly blue. She insisted it was just fatigue. Then she stopped coming down for supper. She died a week later, her body so light the undertaker carried her out like a sack of linens. The whispers after her death weren't cruel. If anything, they were admiring. "So lovely at the end," one woman said, pressing her hand over her heart, like she'd fallen asleep in snow. You think of that sometimes as you touch your own skin. Not in fear, not really. More in quiet acknowledgement. You know what you're trading. The radiance, the thinness, the hollow-boned elegance that only danger can bring. It's not just women either. Men, especially those in politics or the theatre, use arsenic tonics to flush their cheeks or tighten their jawlines. No one escapes the pressure to appear more than mortal. But it is the women who perfect it. They learn to dose carefully, take breaks, mask the symptoms. They chew charcoal pellets to counter the nausea. They drink milk laced with chalk to calm their stomachs. They hide the tremors behind lace gloves and the shortness of breath behind quiet laughter. There's a fine line between illness and allure, and they walk it with every swallow. You take your next pill slowly. The taste is nothing. The weight on your tongue, barely noticeable. But afterward, sitting alone by the window, you feel it. That faint tightening behind the eyes, the buzzing in your limbs, the impossible calm that comes when your body's just slightly off kilter, like a teacup spinning at the edge of its saucer. Tomorrow you'll skip the dose, just to be safe. But tonight, as the candlelight kisses your cheek, you glow. And isn't that the goal? In this world, beauty isn't about health. It's about triumph, over decay, over time, over the body itself, even if it costs you everything. The glow doesn't help you sleep. You lie in bed long after midnight, staring up at the cracked ceiling as shadows stretch like long fingers across the walls. The city outside has quieted, but your mind hasn't. Neither has your heart. It beats faster lately, not from fear, from light, from the gas. Your home, like so many in the city now, has been blessed or cursed with gaslight. A flickering blue flame behind frosted glass, fueled by coal gas piped in from the street mains. You used to think it was a miracle. No more fumbling for candles, no more soot trails along your books. But the miracle is starting to show its cost. You roll over and eye the sconce above your mantel. It's off, but a faint odour still lingers in the room, a kind of metallic sharpness. You've smelled it for weeks now, even when the flame is out. You try not to think about it, because the truth is, gaslight doesn't just change your walls, it changes your body. Doctors now whisper of gaslight headaches, of tremors, of mysterious fainting spells that strike well-lit homes more than poor candle-lit ones. They suspect the invisible vapours, residue from burning coal gas, build up in rooms without proper ventilation. But how could you not use it? It's modern. It's civilized. You remember how dark your world used to be. Before the gas, rooms glowed orange with candlelight. Everyone went to bed early. Silence came naturally. But now the streets never sleep. The parlours never dim. Shop windows gleam all the way to midnight. Your eyes are tired, but your brain buzzes. Sarah says her husband developed insomnia the same month they switched from whale oil to gaslight. He paces their flat until 2 or 3 in the morning, muttering. His skin is pale, his eyes sunken. And still, He insists on turning the valve each night with pride. "It's the future," he says. "We ought to be thankful." You suppose he's not wrong. You are thankful, but your lungs disagree. You've been coughing more lately, a deeper, more persistent sound. It rattles in the back of your ribs like something trapped there, shaking to be let out. You sit up and light a match, not for the gas lamp, just a candle. The flame is soft, real. It flickers against your fingers like a sigh of relief. It's not just the light, though. The house has started to gather soot, even in places it shouldn't. A fine black dust coats your windowsills, your pillowcases, your teacups. You wipe it away each day, but it returns by evening. You've stopped asking where it comes from. You already know. The price of light is weight. You wrap yourself in a blanket and sit by the hearth, where the coals have long gone cold. Outside, the gaslights flicker along the lane like a trail of tired eyes. Your skin glows faintly in the reflection of the window, from beauty, from poison, from the steady accumulation of things you can't see. You press your hand to your chest. The beating is fast, a little too fast. But what choice do you have? In a city that never darkens, sleep becomes a stranger, and the light, the gaslight, it watches you even when your eyes are closed. You try to sleep again, you really do. But even with the gas turned off and the candle snuffed, the room glows faintly, as though the walls themselves remember light. You turn your head on the pillow and breathe deep. The scent of the linen is laced with smoke and coal. It clings to everything. Your clothes, your hair, your lungs. You can't escape it. Not really. And that's the other sickness that gaslight brings. Not just sleeplessness, but lungs that never feel full. You remember visiting your cousin in the country last spring. Her house ran on firewood and oil. The nights were black and still, the silence almost uncomfortable. But the air, oh, the air. You breathe like you hadn't in years. Deep, easy, clean. Back in London, though, you're never quite filled. The gas might be off, but the fumes remain. They drift in through windows, seep under doors, ride in on boots and coats and passing carts. Every chimney smokes. Every pipe leaks. Every breath is a gamble. And still, people love it. Gaslight means progress. Bright streets, late theatre, reading after supper. Men can work longer hours. Women can sew until midnight. Children no longer fear the dark, but maybe they should. Even the doctors are conflicted. Some blame gaslight for a new rise in urban malaise, a kind of nervous fatigue that no one can quite define. Others say it's a godsend. One hospital has even installed overhead gas jets in its surgical theatre. No more shadows, they boast. But the nurses all wear handkerchiefs over their mouths now. You cough again, dry, deep. It feels older than you are. You light another candle just for comfort and notice your breath catch in the flame. You recall an article, one you read in a discarded magazine, describing a phenomenon called lamp black lungs. Chimney sweeps had them, gas workers too. But now even genteel ladies were developing it. Microscopic soot, inhaled slowly, day by day, until the lungs turn grey. Sarah once said she started coughing blood after spending a week in her aunt's drawing room. Her aunt who kept 6 gas sconces burning from dusk until dawn, even in summer. She thought it made the furniture look more expensive, Sarah muttered. Meanwhile, I nearly coughed up my liver. You laugh quietly, remembering that, but it's not funny, not really, because now you live in that glow. It's everywhere. It follows you to work, to church, to the apothecary. You walk home under its trembling eyes. You bathe in its flicker. You grow pale in its blue-white kiss. And the darkness, real, full darkness, feels unnatural now. It frightens you in ways it never did before. It's become a stranger. You look down at your hands. The candlelight makes them lovely, slender, white, almost luminous. But you know what else glows in low light? Poison. You lie back down, not expecting rest, just stillness. Because in this world, sleep isn't natural anymore. It's a negotiation with the light, the lungs, and the slow, quiet illnesses that come wrapped in flickering gold. Sunday morning. A thin ray of pale sunlight filters through the soot-smeared glass, and you sit with a small, bitter smile. Sunday means rest, supposedly. But in your world, rest comes in peculiar forms. You set aside your tea and reach for the tin box on the shelf. Inside, rhubarb pills, dull brown, slightly tacky, shaped like tiny acorns. They smell faintly of dried earth and vinegar. You pop 2 into your mouth and swallow quickly. These are your purgatives, and Sunday is your purging day. It's a tradition now, not one taught by priests or prescribed in clinics, but passed between neighbours like a secret handshake. Once a week you cleanse the system. You sweep out the week's sins with a sweep of the bowels. Rhubarb is the mild option. Others take castor oil, senna, even syrup of buckthorn, a black gloppy liquid that tastes like fermented tree bark and doesn't bother hiding its purpose. You know someone who drinks turpentine mixed with milk. The belief is ancient, but Victorians have perfected it. Illness begins in the gut, they say. Bad moods, bad skin, bad dreams. Constipation is the enemy, and laxatives are its righteous cure. You once heard a woman at the bakery claim she cured her husband's anger by dosing his porridge with cream of tartar each morning. He became quiet and agreeable, she said, almost empty inside. Whether that meant spiritually or physically, no one dared ask. The pills begin to stir in your belly by late morning. A warmth, a coiling sensation, not unlike dread. You stay close to the chamber pot. The process is not dignified, but you feel proud afterward. Lighter, cleaner. As if you've discarded the previous week's failures through sheer bodily will. And it's not just pills. You've tried Epsom salts, bitter and metallic, dissolved in tepid water. You've heard of families mixing soot and molasses into bricks for chewing. One woman at the mill swears by eating raw dandelion greens dipped in salt and vinegar, followed by an hour lying flat with a hot brick on the stomach. The idea is not just to cleanse, but to suffer a little while doing it. If it's easy, it probably didn't work. You glance over at the calendar. You've kept up this weekly routine for almost 8 months now. Have you been healthier? Maybe, but that's not really the point anymore. The ritual itself becomes its own reward. The slow dosing, the waiting, the quiet moment after it's over, when your stomach stops twisting and you sit with a cup of broth, clean in ways that feel deeper than physical. Even the children know. Have you purged yet? They whisper to each other in schoolyards and stairwells. One boy tried it too often and fainted in church. His mother said it was a sign the devil was leaving him. No one questioned her, and why would they? Because in this world the path to wellness is paved with emptying, of food, of illness, of self. Only the lightest survive. By evening you feel hollowed out, not unpleasantly, more like a house after cleaning day, swept, a little echoey. You move through the room with ease, light on your feet, as though your organs are floating a fraction higher than usual. There's a calm that comes with it, a quiet pride. Your skin looks less sallow in the mirror, your eyes seem sharper. Sarah stops by to borrow thread and remarks, "You look different, like you've had a proper rest." You nod. You don't tell her that you've eaten nothing since the night before, that your supper tonight will be hot water with lemon peel and a spoonful of molasses. Not because you're poor, not today anyway, but because after purging the body must fast. That's the second half of the Victorian cleanse. Emptiness, followed by stillness. The thinking goes, once you've expelled the foulness within, You mustn't rush to refill yourself. You must give the body time to recalibrate. Let it remember its natural rhythms. Some say even water can be too filling if taken too soon. You've known women who fast every Sunday entirely. Some fast for 3 days, sipping only thin barley water and applying vinegar compresses to the wrists to cool the blood. You tried that once. By day 2 your legs went numb and your ears rang like bells, but you did feel a strange peace, like you were floating half an inch above the floor. The danger was part of the appeal. So was the silence that came with it. Because in a house with no food cooking, no pots bubbling, no cutlery clinking, time slows. You begin to hear your own heartbeat. Your breath becomes measured. Your body feels obedient. But fasting isn't always elegant. You've also seen the failures. The butcher's niece who tried to fast for 9 days and collapsed while hanging laundry. The elderly woman who swore a weekly starvation would align her womb and ended up bedridden with dizziness and bleeding gums. And the worst, young Helen, who disappeared from dinner one Sunday, only to be found 3 days later hunched in her closet, whispering numbers to herself. She recovered mostly, but never quite ate the same again. Still, no one blamed the fasting. They blamed her weakness. Because in this world, true health is tied to restraint. Not indulgence, not appetite, but control. You take slow sips of your molasses water, the sweetness sharp and metallic. It coats your tongue, but doesn't satisfy. That's not what it's for. It's a signal to the body, a gesture of reassurance, just enough to keep you upright. Outside, the streets are quiet. Gas lamps flicker low. Someone is humming a hymn next door. You light a single candle and sit on the floor, back straight, palms resting lightly on your knees. You focus on the breath, not too deep, not too fast, just enough to keep from tipping over. Tomorrow you'll eat, perhaps a soft egg or porridge. But tonight you remain in this strange, glorious state of emptiness. Because here in the Victorian age, health is not abundance, it is absence. Not what you take in, but what you're willing to let go. The morning air bites sharply as you step outside, shawl pulled tight around your ribs. You're still a little weak from yesterday's fast, but that's expected. It means the bad humours have left you. The slate has been wiped clean. But today's remedy is not about emptiness. Today is about shock. You head toward the rear courtyard where Sarah has already started preparing the tub, an old iron basin, half filled with water drawn from the outside pump. The surface glistens, rimmed with ice. She sees your face and chuckles. Cold water's the best tonic, darling. Revives everything but the dead. You're not so sure, but you nod anyway, kicking off your shoes and rolling up your sleeves. This is the cold water cure, a mainstay of Victorian health. It comes from spas and sanatoriums, where wealthier patients bathe in alpine springs and waterfall-fed pools. But here in the alleys and brick courtyards of London, the method is cruder. A tub, a bucket, and a great deal of screaming. You ease your feet in first. The water feels like punishment, then your shins. Then steeling yourself with clenched teeth, you lower the rest of your body in with a gasping splash. It takes your breath. Your heart pounds like a drum. Every muscle clenches. The world narrows to cold and breath and trying not to leap out of your own skin. Sarah laughs. That's the blood moving. That's the sickness fleeing your spine. You want to curse her, but you can't speak. After 30 seconds, maybe less, you climb out, teeth chattering, and wrap yourself in a scratchy towel. Your skin is blotchy and tingling. Your head spins. And oddly, you do feel more awake. That's the idea. The hydropaths say that cold water resets the nerves, strengthens the immune system, and realigns the body's natural energies. Some recommend plunges. Others swear by dousing. pouring buckets of freezing water over the head at dawn while reciting verses or prayers. There are even clinics, true ones, with white walls and clean linen, where patients are wrapped in soaked sheets and left to shiver quietly under woolen blankets. It's called a wet sheet pack, and it's supposed to draw out fever, madness, melancholy. You wonder how many of those patients ever truly warmed again. Sarah tells you about a cousin who cured his consumption with daily icy plunges. Another woman swears she stopped fainting after a week of river baths. Of course, one man caught pneumonia and died after just 3 days, but they say his lungs were already weak. He might have died anyway, and anyway he looked peaceful in the end. Back inside, you huddle by the stove, drying slowly, each toe prickling back to life. Your skin glows again, not with arsenic, but with blood rushing in from your core, trying to understand what just happened. It's not comfort you feel, it's clarity. The kind that only comes after you've shocked your body into submission, after you've reminded your heart that it must keep going, even when everything begs it to stop. You sip tea. The heat feels richer now, because sometimes to feel truly alive, you have to freeze. Your fingers finally stop trembling an hour later, but your chest still hums with the echo of cold. You stretch your arms, slowly, as if rediscovering your body after some brief, involuntary death. There's a strange peace in it. Not comfort. No, that would be too modern, but a kind of earned stillness. It's the aftermath of the cold water cure that people come to crave. Not the plunge itself, but the stillness that follows. A kind of post-battle hush. You wrap yourself tighter in your shawl and remember the stories from the sanatorium in Malvern. There, patients walk barefoot through dewy grass at dawn, followed by frigid sponge baths and glasses of cold water on the hour. For weeks, months, years sometimes, all in pursuit of vital equilibrium. And for the wealthy, it's practically a status symbol. You've seen the postcards. Plump ladies in lace caps reclined in bathtubs under snow-covered trees, with nurses pouring fresh meltwater down their backs. Meanwhile, you and Sarah are crouched in a stone courtyard behind the coal bins, daring each other not to scream. She's proud of her fortitude. "Haven't caught a fever all year," she says, wiping her arms dry. Cold keeps the spirits sharp. You don't argue. There's something to it. The rituals, the discipline, the pain. They give shape to the days. They fill the silence with purpose. Still, you think of the stories that go less told. The young boy who tried to cure his limp by jumping into the canal every morning before work, only to be pulled out one morning stiff and pale. Or the widow who refused to sleep with blankets for fear of trapping heat and was found blue-lipped by the fire. But they are the exceptions, people say. They were already weak, they lacked will. Because in the Victorian mind, the body is not a fragile thing. It is clay. It can be shaped, hardened, perfected, if only you have the discipline to bear the shaping. And cold water, they say, tempers the soul like steel. You lie down on your cot, now warmed by a brick wrapped in flannel. Your skin still tingles, your lungs feel strangely open, and your heartbeat is loud enough to fill the room. You think of the river and all those mornings you've seen dock workers dousing their faces with freezing buckets, shivering and laughing like they'd just outrun death. There's no gentleness in this form of care, no softness. But there is power, because in a world that demands endurance, sometimes the only way to keep going is to stop feeling. You breathe in, deep, clear, cold, and tomorrow you'll do it again. Because if fire cleanses the soul, ice sharpens it. You've stopped counting how many mornings begin with pain. Today it's in your temples, a tight pressing ache, as though something is squeezing you from the inside out. You touch your forehead and find no fever, just tension. And beneath your eyes, shadows, purplish, like bruises that haven't yet decided what they are. You know the cause, though you wouldn't dare speak it aloud. Belladonna. And the pale powder still resting in the folds of your vanity towel. You used it last night. 2 drops in each eye. The bottle is small, corked and labelled in faded ink. Atropa Belladonna, for brightness of gaze and emotional softness. The deadly nightshade. A poison, yes, but also a beauty elixir revered across drawing rooms and opera boxes. In small doses it dilates the pupils, giving the eyes that glassy innocent sheen so favoured in portraits of the day. A wide, liquid gaze eternally on the brink of tears. That look sells books, earns favours, captures the attention of suitors and doctors alike. You learned the trick from a seamstress who once fitted gowns for an actress at the Lyceum. She kept her bottle in a ribboned locket, the seamstress said. Took a drop before a curtain call every night. Said it made her sorrow look real. The sorrow is real, you think now, pressing a hand to your pounding head. But still, you don't regret it. Because last night at the supper gathering, a gentleman you barely knew leaned in and whispered, "You have the most astonishing eyes." You'd blinked slowly, hoping the candlelight caught them just right. And so, the headache feels earned. The belladonna craze has its roots in Renaissance Italy, but the Victorians have adopted it with particular intensity. In a world where women are expected to be soft, responsive, emotionally transparent, what better than a chemical that makes your gaze permanently vulnerable? You've heard of girls using it in stronger doses, not just to soften the eyes, but to calm hysteria. A few drops taken by mouth, and their panic melts into pliant stillness. The doctors call it relaxation. The girl call it dissolving. You wouldn't try that, not yet. But the eye drops? You've grown accustomed to the sting. It bites at first, then fades into a smooth, velvety numbness. And then, the transformation. Every room feels dimmer. Faces blur at the edges. But your own reflection, well, she looks beautiful, haunting even. There's a danger, of course. You've heard of a girl who went blind after a season of nightly drops. The nerves in her eyes gave up, scorched into silence. Another girl swore the belladonna changed her dreams, made them longer, sadder, more vivid. She stopped taking it only after she woke one morning, unable to recognize her mother's face. But most women don't talk about those things. They talk about how the light looks when it catches in the eye, how it makes men stare just a little longer, how it buys you patience or praise or quiet. Because in this world, softness is a weapon, a blade dulled just enough to pass for virtue. You rest your hands in your lap and breathe slowly through the ache. You'll skip the drops tonight. Let your vision sharpen. Let the pain fade. But only for now. Because tomorrow night, you may need to be beautiful again. You stand by the window as dusk settles, the last of the sunlight tracing pale lines across your floor. Your headache has eased, but your eyes still ache from within, not from light, but from longing. You blink slowly. The world swims gently, the way it does when you've used the drops too many times in a week. But you didn't use them today. That's the cruel trick. The belladonna leaves a shadow behind, even when it's gone. You touch the corners of your eyes and wonder if they still hold that glassy sheen, if anyone would notice tonight, or if your gaze has dulled into something ordinary. You fear it has. That's the danger with Victorian beauty. Once you've tasted the transformation, returning to plainness feels like illness. You light a candle and glance at the powder box beside it. Lead white. The soft, fine dust you press into your cheeks when the arsenic pills aren't doing enough. It makes your skin porcelain, flawless in dim light. You know it's poison. Everyone knows. But like the belladonna, it works. It covers blotches, erases fatigue, makes you glow. You dab your finger into the powder and pause. You think of the women who never stopped using it, who wore it daily until their faces broke out in ulcers, their teeth loosened, and their bones ached. The condition has a name now: lead palsy. It leaves the hands trembling, the voice slurred, the skin grey beneath the powder, no matter how thick it's applied. But still it sells. There's a tragic elegance to it, the slow fading of a woman who glowed too long, a kind of martyrdom that society both pities and praises. You know of one who died with rouge still clinging to her cheeks. The mortician said it made her look alive, almost peaceful, he whispered. You wonder if they'll say that about you one day. You put down the powder puff and close the lid. Not tonight. Instead, you sit at the vanity and look at your face just as it is. No arsenic blush, no belladonna shimmer. Your eyes are smaller, your cheeks are uneven, your mouth looks tired. But you're here, and for a brief moment, that feels enough. Then comes the voice in your head, the familiar whisper. How will they look at you tomorrow? Will you catch their gaze at the market? Will Sarah still envy your skin? Will the shop clerk still pause before handing you your change? The moment breaks. You reopen the box. Because in this world, beauty is not a luxury. It's a requirement. A kind of health all its own. One measured not in strength or vitality, but in appeal, in silence, in softness. And so you press the powder to your cheek, slowly, methodically, as you've done 100 times before. You blot the lips, you draw the line beneath the eyes, you do not think of what it's doing underneath, you only think of the light it casts tonight. Because in the Victorian age, survival isn't just about breath and blood, it's about being seen, and being seen as lovely no matter the cost. You wake to sunlight and soreness, your skin tingling beneath the powder you forgot to wash off, your limbs aching as if you'd run uphill in your sleep. You rub your face and feel a light flake of lead white crumble beneath your fingers. Another night survived, another day to endure. But before the chores, before the market and the coal fire and the soup pot, there's the ritual of friction. You set the basin of water aside. This part doesn't need it. You reach instead for the brush. Its bristles are stiff boar hair, worn down at the tips but still cruel in the middle. You strip to your chemise, then begin. Long, dry strokes across your arms, your legs, your back. Dry brushing. Victorian women learn it early. It stimulates the nerves, they say, encourages circulation, scrapes away impurities of the flesh. You are taught that the skin is the body's third lung, and that to breathe properly it must be scrubbed until it shines. You grit your teeth as the bristles scrape across the inside of your thigh. It burns. That means it's working. You remember your mother standing at the hearth, brushing her arms raw with a coarser brush, stiff as a broom, and saying, "Clean skin makes clean blood." She died of coughing fits, but her skin never once showed a blemish. After the brushing comes the roller, a strange little device that looks like a tiny barrel fitted with blunt teeth. You grip the handle and drag it across your belly. It pinches the skin, kneading the fat, pressing into the flesh until your eyes water. This is no indulgence. This is punishment as medicine. The doctor who gave the roller to Sarah said it was designed to break up female congestion, that it could cure bloating, melancholy, infertility. Especially effective on stubborn thighs, he said, with a smirk that made your skin crawl. Still, she used it, and now so do you. The pain isn't sharp. It's dull, persistent, intentional. You feel your muscles tighten with every stroke. Your mind goes quiet, narrowed down to a single point of sensation. You've read that even Queen Victoria had a morning routine involving vigorous toweling and friction gloves, and the pamphlets for ladies' clubs all recommend daily brushing, especially for those with sedentary dispositions. Some women go further. They slap their faces with chilled linen to keep the blood awake. Others strike their bellies with bundles of birch twigs, borrowed from Nordic spas. One woman you knew wrapped herself in rough wool and ran laps in the courtyard until her thighs bled. She said it cured her nervous spells. You're not so dramatic, but you understand the impulse. Because in a life where you can control almost nothing, where sickness arrives uninvited and men decide your worth, friction is something you choose. Pain becomes power. You carve order into the day with every scrape and roll. Your skin glows red and hot. You look flushed, yes, but also focused, present, real. You dress slowly afterward, careful not to rub away the sting. The ache reminds you that you're still in this body, that it hasn't failed yet. And as you lace your boots and prepare to face the cold morning, you feel sharpened. Because in the Victorian world, you're not born radiant. You scrub your way to health, one stroke at a time. You step into the street that afternoon feeling raw, glowing not with health, but from discipline, skin warm beneath layers of wool and cotton. The friction lingers. Every breeze reminds you of the morning's brushing, as if your body still smoulders beneath the surface. Sarah joins you outside the milliner's. She's hobbling slightly, which means she started using her wooden friction roller again. She carries it everywhere now, wrapped in muslin like a sacred relic. I did the backs of my arms twice today, she says proudly, and my stomach until it turned purple. You nod. That's about right. The two of you walk on. Inside the haberdashery, another woman leans across the counter, asking the clerk whether the new friction mitts are in yet. She describes them in detail, lined with horsehair and lavender oil. So you can cleanse and calm at once, she says. The clerk smiles politely, but you can tell he's heard this 100 times. The whole city seems obsessed with rubbing, scraping, pinching, slapping. It's the one thing the doctors and the quacks agree on. From the fashionable to the desperate, everyone believes in the gospel of stimulation. When in doubt, rub. You pass a poster nailed to a lamppost advertising a new health salon in Bloomsbury. The words frictions, rolling beds, female gymnasium are painted in bold blue ink. A sketch shows a woman lying stiffly while two attendants roll her body up and down with what looks like a spiked barrel. Below it, in smaller letters, rejuvenation by contact. Sarah reads it aloud and scoffs. Who can afford 2 attendants? But her eyes linger on the image, just a little longer than necessary. Back home, you sit by the fire and roll your stocking down. Your calf is faintly bruised from yesterday's session. You touch it gently, then not so gently, curious to see how much it remembers. And that's the thing, isn't it? These rituals don't just treat illness. They create sensation. They prove you're still capable of reacting, of feeling, of controlling pain. You're not a ghost. You're not fading. Not yet. You recall the midwife who used coarse linen ropes to whip her own shoulders each morning. Keeps the blood clever, she said. You also remember the woman in the bakery queue who claimed she reversed her migraines by slapping her temples with chilled bricks until her ears rang. Each story more brutal than the last. But there's a kind of community in it too. Women compare bruises like battle scars, ask each other how long the sting lasted, whether it tingled up the spine, whether they saw stars. It's not always suffering. Sometimes it's shared triumph. You think back to the first time you brushed your arms raw, how uncertain you were, how red and blotchy your skin looked afterward. But then Sarah had smiled and said, "Now that's the look of someone who's trying." Trying. It's a strange word for health, but it fits. You rise to stoke the fire, arms still warm beneath your sleeves. You've eaten almost nothing today. You're tired. Your lungs itch faintly. But your skin is alive. 'Cause in this era, the body isn't healed through rest or softness. It's carved into wellness by contact, by tools, by pressure, by force. And if it hurts, good. That means it's working. The air inside the gymnasium smells like sweat and rust. Metal clicks and groans echo through the hall, mingling with the soft murmurs of lace-collared ladies and the sharp bark of an instructor counting under his breath. You step in cautiously. The place looks more like a blacksmith's workshop than a sanctuary of health. Bars, pulleys, wheels, padded benches, swinging handles. No music, no soft floor mats. Just machinery, and bodies being moulded like tin beneath it. This is therapeutic exercise, Victorian style. You were sent here by a doctor who said your blood was lazy, and your spine too softly inclined. He handed you a card printed with heavy gold ink. Westbourne Health and Posture Improvement Room. You asked what to expect. He said only, "You'll feel it," and you do. The instructor guides you to a long wooden bench fitted with straps and metal foot pedals. "This one is for women with weakness in the lower torso," he says without irony. You lie back and he fastens your legs into place. Then the pedals start moving. Slowly at first, then faster. Your knees lift and lower, while gears creak and a hidden flywheel hums. You're being exercised by machine. Your arms lie limp at your sides, your back pressed against cold leather. It's like being puppeteered. Other women lie nearby on similar contraptions. One has her arms strapped into a crank that flaps them up and down like a marionette. Another is face down on a padded roller, her torso vibrating gently as a belt passes beneath her ribs. She looks half asleep, or possibly stunned. A nurse strolls through the hall with a clipboard. She checks your form, offers no comment, moves on. This place is no joke. The machines are based on the inventions of Gustav Zander, a Swedish physician who believed every ailment had a mechanical solution. Weak spine? Spin on the rotation table. Poor digestion. Work the abdominal pulleys. Female nerves? Try the hysteria chair. A padded seat that vibrates with gentle rhythmic pulses until the patient relaxes. You've heard the whispers about that chair. Some women go weekly, others twice a day. No one speaks of it directly, but everyone knows what relaxed means. Your legs keep moving. You're sweating now. Not a flush, not a glow. Sweat. Real, working moisture rolling down your temples. It feels strange, almost indecent. Women aren't supposed to perspire, not in public. But here, it's expected. Welcomed even. The instructor nods approvingly. That's it. That's the system waking up. When you finally unstrap yourself and sit up, your knees wobble slightly. You feel heavier and lighter all at once. There's no applause, no towel offered, just the next machine. You try the torso rotator, twisting side to side like a weather vane with a corset on. Then the pull-down ropes. Then the calf stretcher, which you curse softly under your breath. Each one targets something different. Each one insists that you're broken, but fixable. And that's the Victorian dream, isn't it? That bodies can be re-engineered, that even the weakest woman can be reconstructed, lengthened, braced, tightened, corrected, until she fits the design. You stagger out an hour later, breathless and bruised in places no one will see. And somehow you feel stronger, not just in the body, in defiance. Because in a world where women are taught to be still, you just became a machine. You return the next day, of course. The soreness has settled in, that stiff ache between your shoulders and across your thighs. Proof that something happened. That your limbs were pushed, pulled, twisted by a system that believes women are made not of softness, but levers and gears. The gymnasium is busier now. You spot Sarah across the room, strapped into the arm extension rig, her expression a mix of amusement and mild regret. The instructor gives her a thumbs up as the wooden beams swing her arms wide like she's preparing to fly. She rolls her eyes at you and mouths, 12 more. You head to your usual bench, but today you're feeling braver. You point toward the posture wheel, a bizarre contraption that resembles a medieval torture device with leather straps and a rotating frame. The nurse raises an eyebrow. That one's popular with the actors and dancers, not for the faint. You shrug. What's faint anymore? You step inside the wheel, lean against the curved backboard, and let her strap you in. Then, the platform begins to tilt, forward, backward, slowly rolling your spine along the arc. Your vertebrae pop one by one, releasing pressure you didn't know you carried. You close your eyes, and for a brief moment you forget the coal soot, the street noise, the clamour of expectations. All that remains is the rhythm of the wheel and the strange freedom of surrendering your body to something outside yourself. This is no longer about health. Not entirely. It's about order. The Victorian age loves systems. They measure your pulse with stopwatches, weigh your food by the ounce, catalogue your posture, your gait, your breath. There's a machine for every imperfection and an expectation that you will use it. Because here, illness is failure. Sagging shoulders mean laziness. A round belly suggests weak will. Even a limp handshake invites suspicion. So you adapt. Some women you've met swear by the electric waist belt, pulsing with mild shocks to encourage abdominal tone. Others are obsessed with the vibrating saddle, originally meant for horseback posture, but now repurposed as a treatment for pelvic alignment. No one mentions how they flush when riding it. You once overheard a lady from the West End describe how she straps her legs into resistance cords before afternoon tea, hidden beneath her crinoline, exercising while conversing about Dickens. The body is always under construction. Even your doctor keeps charts on how many inches your shoulder blades should be, apart. He calls it standardization. You call it pressure. Still, you return. Because as painful, absurd, and sometimes humiliating as these mechanical rituals are, they offer a kind of logic, a promise. If I do this, I will be well. Even if wellness is defined by someone else. Even if wellness hurts. You unstrap from the wheel and wobble slightly, spine buzzing from motion. You see Sarah again. She's moved to the calf press. You nod to her. She grins. Tea after. You nod back, breathless. Because this is your version of the salon, the social circle, the rebellion. You're not just shaping your body. You're defying everything that says you must stay still. You wake to a scratching sound. No, not rats. Not this time. It's the stiff rustle of brown paper being unwrapped, of glass bottles clicking faintly against one another. Sarah is in your room again, and this time she's brought something new. Imported from the Indies, she whispers, as if it were contraband. She opens the parcel to reveal 4 small vials filled with oddly coloured substances. One pale green, one cloudy blue, one a dull brown, and one disturbingly clear. Health tonics, she announces, eyes gleaming. Guaranteed to stimulate the liver, firm the skin, and do something to the spleen. You squint at the labels, each handwritten in that spidery cursive that always manages to look half scientific and half mystical. One says tincture of vinegar and eggshell. Another promises electric elixir of life, and appears to have a dead bee floating inside. You sigh. Not again, but of course again. Because when your body aches, your face sags, and your skin turns sallow from weeks of soot and stress, the promise of a miracle in a bottle becomes difficult to ignore. Sarah pours a thimble's worth of the green tonic into a cracked porcelain cup. This one's full of camphor, I think, and turpentine. You blink. Turpentine? She nods. But just a dash. It clears the brain. You hesitate. Then slowly you take the cup. It burns like betrayal on the way down. Welcome to the world of Victorian ingestibles, where tonics, tinctures, elixirs, and drafts flood the market with no regulation, no consistency, and frankly, no shame. If it can be steeped in alcohol or stirred into treacle, someone is selling it as a cure. You've tried cod liver oil, of course, an oily, fish-scented assault that promises stronger lungs and better morals. You've endured raw onion syrup for coughs, coal tar drops for skin blemishes, and a powdered chalk mixture that claimed to neutralise female distress. But these tonics are something else. They sit at the border between medicine and hope, sold by travelling hawkers with theatrical flair, or dispensed in back alleys by women with faraway accents and stories of jungle cures and mountain springs. The latest craze? Arsenic wafers. Yes, arsenic. A trace amount, wrapped in paper and sold at cosmetic counters. For the glow, they say. To draw out impurities. And it does make your skin pale with an eerie porcelain sheen that Victorian beauty prizes above all. No one talks much about the side effects. You glance back at the vial Sarah opened. It smells faintly of camphor and candle wax. You remember someone saying it made their headaches disappear for hours. Others claimed it brought hallucinations of light. But that's not what makes you reach for the second vial. It's the need to believe that something strange and small, taken in secret, could tip the balance back in your favour. That a body this tired, this pressured, this pulled apart by corsets and criticism might be made whole by just a few sips of something exotic and forbidden. You take the second tonic. This one tastes like menthol and something darker, something buried. Sarah watches you, impressed. You try not to grimace, because in the Victorian health world, if it tastes awful, it must be working. You lie back against your pillow, lips still tingling from the tonic's bite. The room seems to shift slightly, only a little, but enough to remind you that these aren't just drinks, they're experiments, and your body is the ongoing trial. Sarah paces the room, already uncorking the third bottle. This one, she says, has opium in it. Not too much, just enough to smooth out the nerves. Of course it does. Opium is in everything now. Infant syrups, sleeping powders, cough lozenges. You know women who keep laudanum tucked in their reticules like a secret weapon, ready to hush away melancholy or indigestion with a few measured drops. One lady you met at a charity dinner swore she wrote better letters when tinged with tincture. The line between remedy and retreat blurs quickly in Victorian parlours, and yet no one really talks about it. These substances arrive cloaked in euphemism, nervous soothers, digestive clears, female balancers. The bottles are elegant, the fonts delicate, the claims impossible. The dangers, muted under layers of etiquette and hope. You sip the third tonic. It goes down smoother, syrupy, sweet, with a faint bitter undertow, almost pleasant. And then, warmth. Your fingertips tingle, your limbs feel lighter, the corners of the room blur slightly, softening like a daguerreotype in water. Sarah grins. See? Told you. You're not sure what to say. Words feel lazy in your mouth. You think of all the advertisements plastered on walls and wedged between newspaper pages. Reawaken your glow. For the woman with no time to waste, a bottle, a promise, a price. Some are made in proper apothecaries, others in someone's kitchen. Either way, no regulations, no oversight, just the powerful blend of desperation and trust. And perhaps the most disturbing part? Some of them work. That's what makes it so hard to resist. You've watched friends recover from long illnesses after taking root-based syrups. You've seen complexions brighten after bitter herbs and gums. You've even heard rumours, whispers really, about a girl whose eyesight sharpened after drinking tincture made from ground mummy dust. Yes, actual mummy, imported from Egypt, powdered, The Victorians will ingest anything if it comes with a promise, but there's always a cost. You recall the girl in your street who took mercury drops for her pale skin. Her lips turned blue. She stopped speaking. Her teeth fell out. Or the man who drank phosphorus wine for virility and began sweating phosphorescent streaks down his arms in the dark. The line between cure and poison here is thinner than lace, but as the warmth of the tonic settles into your bones, you understand the appeal. In a world that demands perfection, bright eyes, clear skin, calm nerves, and unbreakable smiles, these little bottles offer a shortcut, even if it's only temporary, even if it's dangerous. Because when health becomes performance, when every body is judged and compared and whispered about behind closed doors, sometimes a risk feels like the only way out. You glance at the final vial on the table, still unopened. You're not sure if you'll drink it, but you don't throw it away. You just watch it glint in the gaslight, and for now, that's enough. It starts with a smell, not the sour tang of vinegar foot baths or the medicinal sting of camphor, but something subtler, earthier. You catch it in the folds of your neighbour's collar, in the corners of the drawing room tucked into the seams of society itself. It's the smell of mustard. Not the bright yellow paste for ham sandwiches, but mustard seed, ground into powder, mixed into poultices, and pressed onto bare skin with clinical enthusiasm. You learn the name quickly: synopisms. At first, it sounds benign, even botanical, but the first time one is slapped onto your chest during a cough that won't quit, you realise the truth. Mustard burns. Within seconds, your skin tingles, then it itches, then it feels like fire, like someone has ironed your ribs from the inside. The nurse smiles faintly and whispers, "That means it's working." Victorians believe in the power of drawing out illness. If something is wrong inside, bring it to the surface, make it visible. Mustard plasters, vinegar compresses, and blistering agents are all deployed to coax the sickness out. They call it balancing the humours. You call it controlled inflammation. There's even a device for it. A strange little brass cupping set tucked inside your aunt's cabinet. Glass domes with narrow necks, heated with flame and then slapped onto the skin. The air inside cools, and your flesh is drawn upward into the glass like rising dough. You tried it once on your back. The bruises lasted a week. It's meant to stimulate blood flow, to break up congestion, to release blockages. But mostly it feels like a ritual of control, as if suffering is proof of improvement, as if the body must pay its penance in welts and sting marks. Sarah, of course, has tried everything. "I once had a blistering patch on my spine," she tells you, lifting her hair. "They said it would cure my migraines." You lean forward expecting to see some mark. There is none. "That's how you know it worked," she says with a wink. "You're not so sure. But then again, it's hard to argue with belief when it's backed by scarves soaked in eucalyptus, goose grease rubbed into chests, and soapstone bricks warmed and laid at the feet. The body becomes a battlefield, and pain is just another tool in the kit. The most devout health seekers you know treat their skin like parchment, something to be inscribed with salves and rubs and liniments. There's even a man at your boarding house who swears by rubbing kerosene on his scalp to promote hair growth. He now wears a hat at all hours. But perhaps the strangest part is how normalised it all feels. These treatments are as common as brushing one's teeth, though even that isn't a given. A woman you once knew claimed her gums bled less after rinsing with warm vinegar and crushed chalk. The logic seems to be, if it stings, it must be scaring the illness away. So you sit by the fire, your throat wrapped in a flannel scarf soaked in hot salt water and turpentine, and you wait for the burn to settle. You can feel it working, or at least you've been told you should. Later that evening you spot something curious near the washstand. A strange dark patch on the shoulder of your gown. You touch it gently. It stings. That mustard plaster Sarah insisted on earlier has left its mark. She was right about one thing. It definitely drew something out. You pull your collar aside to get a better look, and your skin is mottled red, almost bruised. Still, there's a part of you, deep down, that feels reassured, as if this pain, this sting, this blistering proof means something invisible is finally being chased away. In the Victorian mind, discomfort is often mistaken for effectiveness, and few remedies embody that more than the strange rise of electrotherapy. You first heard about it through a pamphlet pushed under your door. Galvanic health. Reignite the spark of life. At the time you laughed, but then you met a widow at the dressmaker's who wore a copper band around her waist. It's a magnetic belt, she explained. Aligns the energies, keeps the digestion faithful. She was dead serious. Electricity, still new and magical, was seized upon by Victorian inventors and healers as the answer to nearly everything. Wearable galvanic rings, vibrating corsets, hand-crank electric brushes. They all promised a jolt of vitality, a revving of inner engines. You once tried a shock belt, just once. It was a borrowed contraption, leather straps with embedded wires and a hidden crank box. You were told to wear it across your lower back for female torpor. A gentle hum was expected. Instead, it jolted you like a kicked horse. Too vigorous, the seller admitted, apologising with a bow and offering you a peppermint lozenge. The line between therapy and torture device was rarely clear, but people kept buying. In fact, they bought more if the sensation was dramatic. One gentleman swore his galvanic socks improved his gout. Another woman, who'd worn an electric hairbrush for a month, was convinced her dreams were clearer and her thoughts sharper. You suspect she just stopped sleeping out of fear of electrocution, and yet the draw remains, because amidst the leeches and turpentine, the poultices and pressed flowers, electricity represented something modern, something scientific, even if the science was more show than substance. Back in your room, you apply a bit of beeswax ointment to the mustard burns and settle under your wool blanket. The sting is fading, but the tingle in your skin lingers, a reminder of your latest experiment in wellness. You think about how far you've come, from charcoal toothpaste to kerosene hair rubs to mummified powder, and now to wearable batteries. The body in Victorian times is a canvas of hopeful pain. It's pulled, shocked, wrapped, and scorched, all in the name of vitality. And while many of these treatments walk a fine line between remedy and madness, they're always delivered with a peculiar tenderness, a hand on your back, a scarf tied just so. A whispered, "This helped my cousin." It's not just about health, it's about control. In a world that feels chaotic and gaslit and grimy, there's something empowering about applying a plaster or cranking a belt and saying, "I'm doing something, I'm trying," even if it's ridiculous, even if it leaves scars, even if it doesn't work. You wake to a soft scratching at the window, just tree branches in the wind, but it startles you enough to sit upright, the wool blanket bunched at your knees, the mustard-stained gown tugging at your shoulder. Your skin feels tender, your limbs heavy. Yet somehow, despite the vinegar wraps and blistering poultices, the herbal teas and tonic drops, you feel oddly triumphant. You've survived another Victorian cure. The sun outside is barely a smudge, its light diffused by fog so thick it makes the street lamps look like ghosts. London doesn't rise. It seeps awake, slow and pale, like steam from a kettle. From somewhere down the corridor you hear coughing, deep, raspy, persistent. Consumption. Probably. Everyone whispers it. Everyone denies it. You pull on your slippers and wander downstairs. The parlour smells of mint oil and camphor, a combination that now feels like home. Sarah's already seated at the window, sipping something thick and green from a glass that fogs at the rim. "I added crushed garlic this time," she says. "It's supposed to repel the damp." You nod like that makes perfect sense. At this point it does. The housekeeper wanders past and presses a strange coin into your palm. "Keep it by the door," she murmurs, "so illness won't find you." It's not a coin, though. On closer inspection, it's a dried fig, pierced with cloves and lavender buds, tied with ribbon, a pomander. It's meant to purify the air, protect from miasma, and guard the soul. You nod again. The day unfolds in soft, half-lit layers. You walk to the market wrapped in 3 scarves, the innermost soaked with onion juice, a trick Sarah swears by for keeping your lungs clear. The grocer raises an eyebrow but says nothing. He's seen worse. You pass a man on the corner selling plague charms, little wax figures of saints and silver thimbles etched with prayers. A child in bare feet offers to rub your hands with warm vinegar for a penny. And no one finds this odd, because here, in this peculiar age of gaslight and grit, health is less about doctors and more about superstition braided with science, hopefulness tangled with hazard, and sometimes fear. You stop at the apothecary, mostly out of habit. He offers you a powder made from crushed toadstools. "Just a pinch in warm milk," he says, "and you'll sleep like a saint." You decline politely, but take the flyer advertising bat blood for anemia anyway. It makes a good bookmark. You've come to understand that most Victorian health advice walks the line between the uncanny and the comedic. But for those who live it, who breathe in the fog, clutch dried herbs in their pockets, rub beeswax on their wrists, it's a way of making sense of chaos. Illness is invisible, so they fight it with things they can see, touch, and taste, no matter how peculiar. By the time you return home, your feet ache and your scarf smells like a salad. But you tuck the pomander above your bed anyway, just in case. Because strange as it sounds, you've started to believe a little, not in every remedy, but in the idea that taking action, no matter how odd, is sometimes the only thing keeping the fear at bay. And maybe, just maybe, that's its own kind of medicine. Night falls not with a bang, but a shiver. The wind picks up, the fog thickens, and you sit by the fire in your chamber, legs wrapped in flannel, watching the embers pulse like a slow, steady breath. Somewhere beyond the glass, a cart rattles down the street. You imagine the driver clutching a flask of peppermint spirit and muttering about chest phlegm. You stretch your aching toes toward the hearth and think back to the many strange rituals that now fill your days. The red flannel charm sewn into your underskirt, the salt ring quietly sprinkled around the bedpost, the herbal pouch pinned to your sleeve that smells of sage and something suspiciously like catnip. They are comforting. They're ridiculous. They're yours. And so is the shelf of jars lining your wall, each one a promise, a remedy, a fragment of Victorian hope. Crushed charcoal, powdered rhubarb, treacle, soot, sulphur, beeswax, tallow, wormwood, turpentine, cod liver oil, and a bottle that simply reads, "Snake Elixir," for vigour. You haven't dared open it. Not yet. Sarah joins you later, wrapped in a shawl, a rag soaked in eucalyptus tied loosely around her neck. She pours a spoonful of molasses into her tea and sighs contentedly. "You know," she says, "it's funny how many things they tell us to rub, sniff, gargle, or boil just to stay upright." You smile, because beneath the absurdity lies something sincere. These aren't just remedies. They are rituals of reassurance in an era when medicine can't yet promise cures. People don't do these things because they're fools. They do them because they're scared. Because disease doesn't come with instructions, and the doctor might arrive 2 days too late, and hospitals smell worse than the illness. So you hold on to anything that feels like action. You bind your chest with wool. You gargle salt and vinegar. You You drink licorice root and wrap mustard-soaked cloths around your knees. You place cut onions by the door to trap the bad air. You believe, if only a little, that somewhere in these bizarre instructions is a thread of survival. And maybe that's the truth of it. That Victorian health advice wasn't about logic. It was about agency. Even if it meant wearing a hedgehog skin over your heart to ease heartache. Even if it meant sleeping with garlic stuffed in your ears to ward off coughing fits. Even if it meant whispering "stay back" to the fog as you stepped outside. These weren't just remedies, they were talismans. And so tonight, you whisper one last promise to your own reflection in the sooty mirror. I've done what I can. You press a hand over your chest, still tingling from the plasters, and crawl into bed. Outside, the wind hums. Inside, your breath slows. The world may be full of strange advice and stranger ailments, but here, wrapped in flannel and superstition, you feel just brave enough to rest. And now, with the fire fading to soft red coals and your breath warm against the cold air, let yourself slip gently into the quiet of the night. You've wandered through a world where garlic hung from door frames, plasters burned like fire, and tonics promised everything from clear skin to eternal calm. A world where people grasped at feathers, frogs, salts, and sparks, not because they were foolish, but because they were human, reaching for anything that might keep them from slipping under. And through it all, you made it to the other side, just as they did, laughing a little, aching a little, carrying the sting of mustard and the smell of camphor in your sleeves. Let those thoughts soften now. Let the fog roll back. Let the worry of ancient ailments and oddball cures dissolve into something warmer, something quieter, maybe even something comforting. Your breath slows, the room stills, and whatever aches you carried here tonight, let them fall away with the last flicker of the flame. Because you've done enough, you've travelled far, and now it's time to rest. Just you, the stillness, and the soft hush of history holding your hand.